So I want to share with you how live streaming completely altered the course of my entire life and opened up doors for me that I never knew were even possible. It enabled me to work with some of my biggest musical heroes, put me on world stages and even red carpets, but more importantly than anything, it's allowed me to build a community around my music, around my art, and as an independent artist, that is everything. But plenty has gone wrong along the way. Lessons have been learned and mistakes have definitely been made. It was a whole thing. It hurt me. Some creators would manipulate others. Garbage, horrible person. Things just started arriving at the door. Stood next to Katy Perry on the red carpet. Every single follower gone. Like... Today's video is going to be both me sharing those experiences and stories that I've never really talked about before, and the lessons that I've learned through my mistakes, lessons that I think still stand up today. So here's what I learned after live streaming for an entire decade. So I started out as a streamer back in 2012, back when the space was not as occupied as it is today, and I really saw some potential in using it as a musician, as an artist, because not very many people back then were doing that. One of the very first lessons I learned back then was to adopt new tech and new platforms early, because you never know where they may lead, and being one of the first on the platform gives you mileage for growth in the future. Live streaming appeared to me to be one of those opportunities. Everything felt new and exciting, but also terrifying to be so vulnerable in front of a camera that way. I was so used to editing out the rough bits for my YouTube channel at that point, so it was definitely new, but in what was already becoming an overly filtered, Instagrammable world back in 2012, there was a realness to live streaming that was nowhere else. There was plenty of room for mistakes, and the viewer just saw you for you. First up, oh my god. It almost felt like social media's version of reality TV, and that transparency drew me in. You got to see people just being people, and in my case, a singer showcasing her songs. So I went live for the first time in 2012. I just graduated, I was working at a radio station at the time, and we were touring my music around the UK independently for the first time too. We were living out of the back of this ex-SWAT van, which was our tour bus, and we pulled up alongside the road after a show one night and decided to try out YouTube's new feature, which was live.
We should be live. Hello guys, Emma here. As you can see, I'm in the tour bus at the side of the road.
It was just me in the backseat, guitar, laptop, terrible Wi-Fi. I really didn't know what I was doing or what to expect, but the goal was to try and get the people that were coming out to the tour, to the shows, to come through to this live stream later on that evening, and all the people that were already signed up to my mailing list at the time. And this was a vital lesson early on, encouraging people to use a platform that they don't already use is not easy, but the lesson here is that you need to be vocal and send out that beacon to let people know when and where they can find you when you're live. I still go live 4 nights a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays and Sundays from 9 PM UK time on Twitch. We also started multi-streaming recently, so you can also find me on YouTube, Kick and 17 Live. Drop by sometime if live music is your thing. Your community will never be in one place. Everybody has their preferences. So don't expect people to just find you in the abyss, especially at the beginning. Be vocal across your socials, host your schedule on your Linktree or your website. It actually sounds pretty obvious saying it out loud, but I think people still sometimes forget to do that. So after an excruciating 5 minutes, which felt like years, I really didn't think it was going to work until people started showing up. And after that first singular 1-hour live stream, there was more activity, more interaction online, more merch sales than 2 to 3 weeks of touring. This was like a huge light bulb moment. All of the things that I was looking to enhance at the time, that audience growth, just happened in front of my eyes. And more to the point, we made it happen without spending any money. We were already out of pocket on the tour because touring was expensive. Touring is still expensive. So it was pretty clear that live streaming, whatever this format was, it could be a viable avenue to bolt on to what I was already doing. Like, people really seem to be into this virtual campfire guitar moment, and to see people showing up in like a new way like that, it felt like you'd stumbled in on a secret. Live streaming is baked into every social platform that exists now, so me saying that probably doesn't sound like much, but when you haven't experienced that, like live interaction before, that kind of format, the first time you do, it's odd, it's weird, it's unusual. It just felt rewarding that people were finally starting to take notice of me after working so hard for so many years. And it unlocked a whole new audience for me on an international level, really. But this whole new format was just as new to them as it was to me. And I very quickly learned that you have to be able to create value for your live viewers as the streamer. Think from their perspective and realize that the stream that they're stepping into that day could be the welcome break that they need. They're there to be entertained, to be kept occupied, to see you. So how can you bring that comfort to your stream? How can you be that entertainer? And what value do you bring to the table as the person in front of the camera? Defining that little nugget of information for yourself in the early days can help you shape your content going forward. Through those first interactions and streams in the very beginning, I learned so much about myself as a content creator and what I was able to bring to the table. I very quickly realized that it wasn't just the music content that the audience wanted. It was me, my personality, who I was. And speaking of personalities, I was about to launch myself into a huge pool of big personalities on a platform called YouNow. So where do I begin? YouNow was a live streaming site, is a live streaming site. I believe it's still going today. I no longer stream there anymore, and I haven't for a number of years now. It seemed to have its own community of streamers already. I remember the resolution being like square, it was weird. So I started going live once or twice a day just to kind of test the waters. In my first stream, I maybe had like 5 people. I quickly found out that the more consistent I was, the more growth I'd see. And that is still a factor today. Consistency is key. YouNow back then seemed to be a mixed bag of different styles of content creators, and I felt that I would probably be able to establish myself a bit better there in comparison to other sites. Growth didn't happen overnight in the slightest, but it's easy to pinpoint exactly where the turning point was. We knew that we needed to do something that nobody else was doing on the platform, so we started doing full live band streams. We set up all of our live gig gear at the time and piped the clean audio through to YouNow, which was not something that you could really do easily back then. Most people were going live on their phones or just their webcams. I had a backlit studio at the radio station I was working at the time, so we used that, and it all helped us to really stand out. So identify something that no one else is doing and do that. Experimenting with what can help to make your stream look different can help set the tone of your content overall. How are you going to make yourself stand out like a sore thumb in people's minds? So the backdrop, the vibe, the set design all became something really important to me over the years. Can you tell? Just as you would light the show at the venue or set the stage for a play, this felt like it was a space that needed that. In a sea of streams of people going live in their bedrooms and their offices, I just identified something that no one else on the platform was doing and used it as a tool to help me stand out a little bit more. So audience growth was all well and good at that point, but could I even earn from it? Turns out, not exactly. Not yet, anyway. Monetization just wasn't a thing on these platforms yet, up until 3 months into me using YouNow. So I was really happy to be one of their very first partners on the platform. The day I saw my first earnings for that month was very, very skeptical. $2,000 was what I made in my first month. And to me, that was a lot of money for me then. That's a lot of money for me now. So at first I kind of put it down to a lucky break. I didn't want to kind of throw in the towel at my job at the time and just take this up full time because I didn't fully trust it. Even when it went into my account, I still was unsure. It wasn't until 3 months later that I did actually quit my job. Things were looking consistent. I was earning really, really well. And I can't tell you the huge relief I felt as an independent artist with so many musician friends around me at the time, really struggling to make ends meet, wanting to make music their everyday thing. It's not easy. So this really felt like a diamond in the rough. I felt like I'd found this secret sauce to be able to sustain myself without a record label, keeping all of my freedom and getting to know my audience in a way that I don't think any other artists were doing at that point. So remember that your earnings will fluctuate, especially if you don't have a contract in place. Early on, that was the case for me, but things changed later down the line. Having that first 6 months of data showed me just how volatile things could be month on month. But at that time, it was far enough past a certain threshold and over a consistent length of time for me to be like, right, okay, quitting that job and doing this full time, let's go. I didn't put all my eggs in one basket though. I just made that basket bigger. I put all my concentration in becoming a full-time music streamer, but at the same time explored other online avenues like Patreon. Speaking of, you should definitely check out my Patreon sometime, and these are the people that make videos like this possible. I appreciate you guys. I share a bunch of unfinished, unreleased demos over there, blog posts, lots of different things, so yeah, go check it out. So yeah, don't put your eggs all in one basket. It's not wise. It's 12 years later and that comfort is still there for me in this space in terms of what I earn, which I really did not think would be the case at all. It goes a hell of a long way in enabling me to do music still every single day. It's such a competitive and populated space these days. I think it's even harder now for content creators to create something that is sustainable. I don't want to know about what you create that's sustainable. You can totally do it. Just be smart about it. So going back to You Now and the buzz that was happening around this time, it felt so involved and it felt like you were really a part of something special. But there were definitely some negative things that I experienced on that platform as well. One of those experiences for me, unfortunately, was doxing. Somebody found a family member's address of mine and things just started arriving at the door. Which was unnerving. It was a whole thing. They also spammed that same address whenever I would go live. It only happened a couple of times, but I mean, that was enough. It was scary. The fact that that was something that somebody could find so easily really alerted us to the fact that we needed to do some homework and lock things down in a way more secure way. Other streamers have been doxed in far worse ways, far worse ways, but this was my experience and it was scary enough. The lesson here is to not overshare too much and just be diligent with your privacy. There was also another instance on You Now that really stung me. It really upset me, but it taught me a very valuable lesson. So in the first year of me streaming on You Now, one community member who had interacted with myself and the rest of the community, they were a kind of recognizable screen name that would pop up quite regularly. They taught me a lesson that I would not soon forget as a new streamer in that space, to take everything people say to you online with a grain of salt. Bear in mind, this is based around my very first interactions with people in a live stream. So this particular person was always in the chat, always interacting with the stream, just genuinely seemed to be enjoying their time. And over time, started to share small details about their medical struggles with their treatment. They had cancer. They let it be known, and also let it be known that the stream and being a part of that community, being a part of something, really helped them through what was understandably a very tough time. So I really took that to heart, and it kind of brought a new perspective into this space for me, in that it felt more purposeful. It was bringing some kind of light to someone's day who was really going through it. So that was great. If they enjoyed that music and it helped their day, wonderful, awesome. So everybody was aware of them, I was aware of them. And then months down the line, out of nowhere, I got a message from that person, outed themselves, said they'd made the entire thing up and that they weren't sorry. What do you even do with that? Lying about having cancer is just on another level of garbage, horrible person. I never understood why that person did what they did, and never will understand. That was the first and last time I allowed myself to get so manipulated. I mean, what else are you supposed to do when somebody shares that kind of information with you when you're live? I guess it was a lesson of balance, to acknowledge and respect that some people going through it might share little portions of those details in chat. And I'm cool with that, that's fine. I don't see a problem with it personally. I think a very helpful thing for people to do on the stream side is to really outline to the audience clearly what you tolerate, what you're willing to tolerate in your chat. Some people straight up don't want any of that anywhere near their chat. Personally, I think there are ways to acknowledge those types of comments in the chat without getting too emotionally caught up in that moment. That's all I'll say. So yeah, there weren't really many other musicians on You Now at that time. It was a small circle of us on a really smallish platform. And in this niche little circle of musos, you had some really uplifting and talented individuals. One Key Up, Brittany J. Smith, The Dapper Rapper, all just really awesome, super talented. You make a lot of creative friends and acquaintances along the way. But then you also come across a lot of people who are just full of shit. You gotta stay cautious. And like you really see anywhere these days, there were creators on there that were more exploitative in how they would push up their earnings for themselves on the platform. And really the platform was built with that competitive angle in mind. It's in the interest of the platform to do that, right? So I never pushed to be the creator on the platform with the most tips in the jar. My thought was, if people were coming through to my streams to listen to the music, the content that was there was free for them anyway. I was content with the support that I was getting already. I suppose I mentioned the exploitative thing because you'd hear stories of how some creators would manipulate others into spending money in certain ways. It was just a bit nah. So yeah, I never pushed that competitive angle. I can't really call it a negative factor of the platform because, you know, it was how I earned money. But the way people went about it, the culture around that, I never really kind of was 100% comfortable with or engaged with fully. And being transparent with my audience and that they knew that anything I made on the stream would go towards my music was really important to me. So consistency and transparency have really been the two constants that I think anybody should run with. And when it comes to consistency, setting up a defined schedule is so vital so your audience know when and where to find you. Balance your schedule or burnout. My mission at this point was to widen the reach for my music even more. I wanted to cast the net wider. So I set up a new schedule at this time. I went live every single day, 4 times a day for an hour each in order to hit different time zones. And it worked. My numbers in the US, Australia, the rest of the world went up. At the time, it didn't really feel like work because I was enjoying just hanging out with the people that were watching. But inside, deep inside, I knew that it wasn't a realistic schedule to be an internet jukebox streaming 8 hours a day with naps in between just to hit people in different corners of the world. I knew eventually it would lead to burnout. And I got there. I definitely got there. So I created a more balanced schedule so I could go live but also have time off of camera to be just as creative, creating different types of content as well. Remember, if you're not live, you're not visible. I found that deviating from that defined schedule sometimes drastically affects your turnout. Taking a break or a holiday away, even just for a few days, often resulted in me returning with depleted numbers when I would go live. It wasn't the norm for my schedule. The audience found somebody else to watch in that time, and who could blame them? So while there is always that constant pressure to be visible, you have to mold it around a content schedule that works for you. Just make sure it's not 8 hours a day. A lot of people look to streaming as a dream job, and that's exactly what it is for me. It allows me to do my music full time, manage my own hours. I think my artist development over the years has only been aided by the fact that live streaming has afforded me that freedom over the years to experiment with what I want to do next, play around with new tech, new visuals, to help mentor other artists. I wouldn't be able to do any of that without having live streaming at the core of what I do. Becoming a streamer for many people feels unattainable. I think content creators today have a much higher mountain to climb than we did back then. YouNow definitely had its peak around 2015 to 2017. Those are like the YouNow glory years where everything was happening all at once. Huge names started to drift onto the platform, and it was just the perfect timing to already be established there. And YouNow was starting to collaborate with major companies, and in turn those opportunities that came through that fell in the laps of the creators on the platform itself. We got that Shorty Award nomination, an iHeartRadio Music Award nomination. All of the success of the platform led me into some really unusual and unexpected experiences. Like one day I'm sitting on the number 13 bus in Coventry, and the next day I'm stood next to Katy Perry on the red carpet. Like, how does that happen? I definitely learned on that trip for the iHeartRadio Music Awards that the traditional media world was so resistant to content creators. I definitely experienced that firsthand. Traditional media at that point really wasn't harnessing socials and content creators as importantly as they do now. We weren't held in high regard, and now I think for the most part we are the ones that kind of drive that machine as well. I did not win the award, which was definitely the outcome we all expected. I woke up the next day and the very first thing I saw on my phone was an article that I got into, so got that press, you know? Worst dressed of the event. Yeah, I still have that dress to this day, which lives as a constant reminder to just enjoy the ride. It's also a lesson that perhaps introverts like me don't belong on the red carpet. And also, wear whatever the f*** you want. So amongst the buzz of everything that was happening around this time, brands were only just starting to try to figure out how they could shoehorn themselves into this space and plop their products next to streamers who were live and had all of these eyeballs, right? With brand deals, if you're gonna peddle someone else's shit, make sure it makes sense for you and your audience. The very first brand deal I made was a mistake. It wasn't in the fact that I got paid, but it didn't really serve me, my audience, or the brand in any way. It was with a watch company called Daniel Wellington. Most of the time it just felt awkward to try and sell these watches to my audience who were there for music and really nothing else.
No, don't buy my watch! Daniel Wellington will not be pleased.
It was kind of a mid-process learning moment where it was like, yeah, this feels not natural and maybe we don't do this again. The point is to try and align with brands that you are actually interested in. This can be tricky because for a lot of people, brand deals are sometimes the largest portion of their income pie, but only you can gauge who you're comfortable with associating with, right? You know your audience, so make sure you know the brands that you're aligning with. Make a hit list of the brands that you would like to work with. I'm speaking now to first-time streamers and musicians that don't really have a handle on that side of the space. Create a gear list, include it in your EPK, and make sure you include that if you do reach out to brands. So around this time, the team at YouNow were taking more notice of me and what I was doing. I think they knew about that kind of non-competitive angle. They definitely did, because they definitely knew, and I definitely knew, that I wasn't the biggest creator on the platform making the biggest amount of money, but I had still grown a significant audience there, and it meant a lot to me that they recognized that and appreciated that. It was the beginning really of a great relationship with them, and I explained to them how grateful I was that I'd found YouNow because it had been such a beneficial find for me as an independent artist. So I became really fixated with the idea that I really needed to share what this was, especially with other musicians. And I found the perfect moment to spotlight the opportunity through what happened next. The next lesson is to be transparent with your audience. Bear that in mind for what I'm about to say. So I gained national press in the UK for a single that I released that got into the charts, and that was a huge deal for me as an independent musician, and it was all because of the audience on YouNow. Viewers really rallied around me on release day and helped me achieve that chart position. It had gone really well, I had this national press, and I saw that also as an opportunity to spotlight the platform, because without it, it wouldn't have been achievable. And more to the point, most people still didn't know about this live streaming space, or just didn't understand it still, so it felt like a good opportunity to do that. Live streaming was still uncharted territory for the majority of people, especially people within the music industry, as I was about to find out. Many people held this perception of live streaming being quite seedy and associated with like webcam sites. That's just where their minds went to first, and I kind of get it. Explaining the concept to people in the music industry here in the UK was tough. Many people didn't understand it, and some people just straight up did not believe me. But I was determined to share this with as many artists as I could. Luckily, there were more people that did listen to me than didn't, and those who did really championed me and helped me to share that message. I started mentoring musicians through programs with UK Music, School Ground Sounds, Help Musicians, highlighting live streaming as that additional route to experiment with. I've spoken at universities and conferences like BBC Introducing, MEDA, VidCon, Berklee College of Music, LIPA, the list goes on. I ended up introducing Imogen Heap, one of my absolute heroes, to the platform so she could trial live streaming as well. I was accepted as a TEDx speaker and talked on how live streaming my life really changed the game for me as a musician. Friends who I met through YouNow introduced me to Beth Hart, another icon and hero of mine. I gave her a mini live stream masterclass on YouNow before one of her shows in Brighton years ago. She ended up pulling me up on stage to perform some songs with her, which was wild, and Jeff Beck was sat in the audience like, what? I'm such a nerd about these details because it was just really a really cool thing that happened. I've written for blogs, spoken on stages, and just tried my best to be a voice to let other artists know that this was a really worthwhile route as an additional revenue stream, but also a really great place to grow your audience and get to know them.
Who's excited to hear the new album? If you are, type a hashtag brave if you're looking forward to hearing the new album. Thank you for becoming a fan. I appreciate that.
Over the years, I have really talked people to death about it, and I still really enjoy mentoring and helping upcoming musicians and artists in the space today. But part of the reason why all of this success was all happening was because of the unique connection that I had with the people that were watching me and the transparency that was there. The audience knows that they're supporting me if they just show up and enjoy the stream. They know that they also support me if they tip in the stream, but they also know that that is optional. They know I'm independent, and they know in many instances they have acted as my record label. For example, back in 2017, when I ran a Kickstarter campaign to lift an album off the ground and get it out the door, they were there. They were the ones that helped me make it happen. And that lesson of transparency is still really at the root of that conversation that I have with artists still today. I think on You Now, I also stood out a bit like a sore thumb because of the equipment that I had. A lot of it was and still is like pro audio stuff because of everything that I did before I became a streamer, right? I was working in a radio station. My partner worked front of house sound for many bands and performed in many bands. We just had equipment around us all the time. So this stuff I've just kind of been accumulating over the years. It didn't happen overnight. But the truth is, you don't need the best equipment to start streaming. Don't think you need to scrimp and save to get the best microphone on the market and halt your content until you have it. Don't let that stop you. In many cases, I think limitations on the gear a person has actually yields a more creative output. So just work with what you've got. Which platform you stream on matters too. I did eventually move from You Now to Twitch, and there were many reasons for that. Number one, the team that I knew and had worked with were kind of moving on, and the platform itself, just in general, was changing in ways that I didn't quite vibe with. But also the interactivity that I built into my backdrop and my content was harder to implement on You Now than it was on Twitch, which already had elements of what I needed to be able to just do things simpler without having to custom code too much of everything. We've had fun pulling off a bunch of visual stunts too on Twitch, like this prank we pulled over Halloween, which tied into my song release and music video at the time.
Are you guys hearing a noise? What is that? It's definitely in the room. I don't know what that is. Are you guys hearing that on the mic? It's not just me, is it? It's probably nothing. Just don't worry about it, okay? Okay, so we are gonna... What the f***? James! James! Are you guys seeing this?
Twitch has been my home for many years now. I love it. I go live 4 times a week, and we always do song requests for you guys. Twitch has opened up some insane doors for me as well. Probably the most notable thing that's happened to me on Twitch is Mike Shinoda from Linkin Park producing one of my songs, which still blows my mind to this day. You can stream it on Spotify. The Linkin Park fan in me still hasn't fully grasped that situation. My Twitch era has also seen the evolution of this studio to what I like to think is its final form, but who knows. Also, last year, my audience helped me to raise over £4,000 for a local hospice called the Myton Hospices, and they looked after my mum last year, so it really made me so happy and meant the world to me that people really rallied around that cause. And yeah, so thank you for that. Twitch itself is littered with super talented musicians, and over the years we've had some pretty huge raids, which I'm always grateful for. But like You Now, it's had its big learning moments, some harsh learning moments. I certainly learned this next lesson the hard way. Don't attempt to delete botted followers using third-party programs. This was probably the singular most horrific, pinch me, please let me this be a dream, awful, oh my god, I can't believe this happened moments of my whole kind of online career. So when you're bot followed on Twitch, particularly if you're live, it can be overwhelming, especially if you've got your alerts on. You get hundreds and hundreds of followers which are just bots, and it's just irritating more than anything. Back then when we were looking at the metrics and the analytics on the back end, it was just all skewed and nothing correlated anymore because of these stupid bot followers that would come through. So after doing a bit of research and talking to streamers that I knew it had also happened to, the general consensus was to use use a third-party program called Commander Root. It would effectively wipe out the botted follower accounts and just take your channel down to the number that it should be, right? In retrospect, it was a really stupid idea. Like, such a stupid idea. There has been instances where this has worked for people, and then there's been instances where there have been user errors, I guess, where it hasn't necessarily worked for people because of that reason, and instead of removing the botted follower accounts, it has removed everyone. So that decade of audience growth, every single follower gone like that. When I tell you I cried, I really was so upset. I was texting my streamer friends at the time just in tears, like I couldn't believe what had happened. I was just obsessively refreshing, going back and just trying to find and undo for what happened in seconds, really. I definitely learned the hard way, and after the fact learned that actually it's best to just leave the botted followers on your account. Eventually Twitch removes them after a certain amount of time anyway. God, I wish I'd known that. So yeah, what was the most sour thing for me as well is that it wasn't just the audience that I'd grown on Twitch that I'd lost, it was the audience that I'd moved across from YouNow to Twitch as well. It was just such a big mistake that I just still think about to this day. Luckily, and this is a testament to the power of the music community on Twitch, a lot of my streamer friends really rallied around me to help me get that follower count back up and alert people to the fact that I just lost every single follower I'd ever had. Wow, talk about like starting from square one. But thanks to them, that follower count did slowly edge upwards again. I messaged every single person I knew, people that I'd been speaking to at Twitch who worked there, the person who made the third-party program, and there was just no getting around the fact that it had happened. All of my followers had been erased. If my stats and analytics and metrics on the back end looked skewed before, they really look skewed after this. Like, whoa, damn. So yeah, I made that mistake so you don't have to. Don't make that mistake. But mistakes happen, and it is a part of the reason why I do love this format so much. You see people for who they are and all the mistakes they make along the way. It is the most human form of social media that we have. The most social form of social media. Like, make that make sense. This video is going to be long, so this leads me on to my last lesson, and that's purpose. Why are you streaming? The truth is, at first I went live to start promoting my music. What I didn't expect was for it to snowball into an entire career. What I didn't expect was to make so many new friends along the way. What I didn't expect is for these otherworldly, once-in-a-lifetime opportunities to come from going down that road. And what I really didn't expect was to still be here 12 years later. What I do expect there to be more of, however, are many more lessons ahead.